Is everybody in a safe place back there? The whole thing's down.
The whole thing is
Yeah. The rest we can let go.
but cut the board lines, that's what's keeping it up.
Is there any way we can chop the boards up?
Normally two things that are holding load right now at the base of the rig are the board lines.
Yeah.
So why don't you get a jib jig and try and triangulate, lash it half, draw back of the boat. If we're going to do the board lines, either people in the boat or way up on the bow.
Okay. Get to the park.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
We have to cut that whole section out of here.
Yeah, we were reaching at about 75 true wind angle in about 30 knots of breeze, and so I was driving at the time, and then there was a big bang, and the rig broke just above the first spreader. Yeah, went with quite a bang. Everything, all the instruments jumped out the bracket, the radar exploded, the camera on the front of the rig exploded, and yeah, and the top of the mast obviously landed in the water with a stump sticking up. Since then, just to make sure we look after the boat, protect the integrity of the hull, we've had to cut everything away, and that's all away safely, and I'm glad to say everyone is safe. Everyone is healthy, no one got injured in the rig coming down, and the boat seems to be good. So now we're just getting everything squared away, and we're going to start motoring towards the Falklands. To lose this rig at this stage to 1,600 miles from the finish is yeah, really disappointing. But we've got a great team, we'll bounce back.
I was in my bunk. We peeled over the wrong way pretty violently, and there was a pretty big bang. And immediately in my head, I kind of known what had happened. But we're bombing along in 30 knots, you know, double head reaching next to Dongfeng, and that was 1 second, and the next second we weren't. And you know, everyone stayed calm, cool, and collected, and we were able to get the thing over the side. That was the diciest part.
The thing with this race is it's you know, it's a challenge. The whole thing is a challenge. Whether you're racing the weather or the elements or the setbacks like this, I think that it just tells the story. This race is about overcoming the difficulties. We can't really overcome this one now, but we can make a plan to go forward and try our hardest to keep in the race.
What a shocker for Vestas 11th Hour Racing, as last night, 100 miles southeast of the Falkland Islands, they were dismasted. In order to preserve the security of the boat and crew, there was no other option than to cut everything clear. The passage through the Southern Ocean has proven to be long and brutal, and the salvation that all of the crews were expecting after that left turn at Cape Horn so far is a long time coming. It's plenty lumpy bumpy out there, and the conditions continue to really challenge the crews. However, we'll try to talk to Team Brunel, Turn the Tide on Plastic, and to get a little bit of more insight into that technical stop at Cape Horn done by MAPFRE. We'll be talking to their team performance manager, Neal McDonald. However, up first, reactions from the team to Vestas 11th Hour Racing's dismasting.
Have they?
Yes.
No. That's not good.
So
It must have literally been in the last.
This Mettraux was surprised or
Vestas. Yeah, well,
regarding the conditions, I mean.
yeah, well, I think the conditions definitely aren't quite as bad as they have been, but yeah, no, not good.
We were sailing, reaching with the sea state, quite short and bad, very choppy. So the boat to catch a lot of the water, for wind speed around 30-35 knots. And it's strange because we are very close to the hot front, so visibility is nothing, and Vestas was very close from us, only 2.5 miles, just behind us like that. So and at one moment I said, oh, it's strange because I can see Vestas on IS, and 30 minutes after we receive an email, and we know they have dismasted. So
We've obviously had a fair few issues on board here, but I could say scary one, seeing a rig coming down. Good to hear they're all safe, and yeah, but incredibly bad luck.
it's a pity because our South Pacific doing this race was really hard, stressful. So it's a pity for them because they everybody have to should finish this leg. I think it's a good result for everybody to finish this leg. So it will not the case for Vestas, and it's a pity.
In the past few hours, we saw the very sad news of Vestas 11th Hour Racing dismasting. Has that had an effect on the team, and has that changed the way that your team is sailing the boat?
Well, that's very difficult to answer that because you can't say, well, nobody said, well, we're gonna slow down or do whatever to avoid to have the same problems as Vestas. But for example, yesterday when we got the big shift, the big lift, normally we could have passed on the masthead directly, but the sea state was still very, very choppy, and there was a lot of vibration on the boat due to and vibration and impact on the boat due to the wave. So Paul has decided to delay this masthead setting and put the throw instead. So why did he take the decision? Would he have taken that decision without the dismantling? We don't know. But I think he decided to be on the safe side, and maybe the dismantling of Vestas has something to do with it.
Now, during a situation like this, the 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week staff here in race control alert the fleet, and then they decide who is the boat out there in the racing fleet that is most capable of assisting a damaged boat. In this case, it was AkzoNobel, which means that the rest of the fleet was given the green light to continue racing. Now, speaking of racing, let's have a look out on the water and see what the virtual tracker shows for the positions. Well, you can see there that MAPFRE is out of their technical stopover, although they're still struggling to make good speed, just sailing with their front sails. The rest of the fleet were up charging eastwards of the Falkland Islands in lumpy conditions, 30 knots, and you see there almost simultaneously problems on board both Turn the Tide on Plastic and Vestas 11th Hour Racing. After getting rid of the rig, they made quick passage towards Port Stanley, MAPFRE passing there just in behind them, and we've just received news that they are safe in Port Stanley in the Falkland Islands. However, we also saw that Turn the Tide on Plastic had problems of their own, so let's check in with their story.
The frontal system turned us into the waves, and they're massive, and clearly we've dropped off one and the rig's not very happy. So we need to go and have a look. A bit gutted at the moment. We have had a brilliant southernation leg, everything in one piece, and then 24 hours in the South Atlantic, and now we've just got a rig issue. We bounced off a big wave, and the rig was all twisting around, so we've dropped the sails, and now Liz has got the unenviable task of going up there to find out what the problem is. Going up.
Okay, I found part of the problem. Spreader 2, starboard side. The spreader root looks like it's threaded. I found the problem!
Alright.
If we can get some impact on the spreader, we might be able to time it.
I'll stay up, but if you need it, I can come down. They're just trying to bounce the mast with Bombi at the front and Liz at the top. Like this, Liz can try to screw again the spreader in the mast. They're trying to fix it, but it's not easy actually. I'm smiling because we just had a call at the very end of the day to say that we thought we were going to be stuck on 3 reefs and a J3, so just plodding along. But they've okayed us to go with 1 reef and a J1 and a fractional, but no masthead sails at the moment. But that is a much bigger sail plan, changes all our options massively. So it's good news and we're going to get sailing again.
So a tricky situation out on the water for Turn the Tide on Plastic, but I'd just like to help explain, particularly for those of you at home that may not be ocean racing sailors, there are a few of us that are, what exactly is going on out at sea. Now the problem that they were talking about is the spreader root, or basically the junction between the spreader here that sticks out laterally from the mast and the mast itself. Now in these rigs there are 2 pins or 2 studs that secure that, and there's one of them that has become unscrewed a little bit. Now if we go to a freeze frame of that headcam video, I'm just trying to line up my shot here, but basically you can see that this is the mast and then this is the spreader over there, and the problem here is that interface. So there's that the forward screw has become unscrewed, and now the problem with that is that it changes all of the angles in that spreader, which in turn changes all of the tensions in the rig, and that's so crucial to avoiding a problem like Vestas 11th hour racing, for example. So really top job from Turn the Tide on Plastic. They've done a really good job to contain the situation. So clearly lots of challenges, and we will keep you up to date on the evolution of what happens out at sea on Turn the Tide on Plastic. However, for the latest information, I just recently called into the boat and spoke with crew member Freddie.
Yesterday, Liz checking the mast saw that there was a problem with one of the D1s on the top spreader, and so the spreader moved a little bit, the starboard one, and so made the mast lose a little bit of rake and tension. So we're not in a safe position to keep pushing the mast, and so now we are limited by it.
Can you tell us about how you first discovered this problem? Was Liz doing a regular rig check as she would any other day, or did you see a problem on deck first?
No, she was actually driving and she started to see the D1 moving a lot, and then she went and checked the rig and then properly, and then she took her conclusions after that. So
being reduced with smaller sails and indeed with lighter winds coming up at the next few days, how much is this going to hurt your leg?
I don't know how bad the MAPFRE is looking on their setup, because their main was completely destroyed. But they are doing good speed, so they are our competition now, and I just had a talk now with our navigator, and it seems that we have high pressure that we have to deal, and if we can get forward of that high pressure, we can be arriving quite fast to Brazil. Otherwise, it will be more 3 or 4 days sailing a lot upwind with light wind. So let's see what happens.
And so, given all of the challenges that you've faced over the past couple of weeks, how is morale on board right now?
It's not easy once you are getting close to Brazil in a good position, then have this problem that delays you. I mean, it's difficult, so you are more like in a delivery way type, but I mean, everybody's always happy and smiling on this boat, so that's good.
Now, if you at home have been watching the show over the last couple of days, you actually know more about this kind of situation, both on Turn the Tide on Plastic and MAPFRE, than the guys out on the water. They don't know what's going on other boats. For example, While Caffari may have shared a little bit of her problem with the rest of the fleet so that they can check up on their own rigs, they don't know that Turn the Tide on Plastic is currently struggling with a reduced sail plan. However, on the flip side, Turn the Tide on Plastic is the only boat in the fleet that was actually close enough to MAPFRE when their sail ripped in half. You heard that there from Freddie in their last interview, saying that they saw the sail rip in half and destroy their mainsail. So now these two boats are racing against each other, and they're both sort of in a diminished state. However, nobody else knows what is going on out there, as witnessed by this clip from Peter Burling, who's clearly still in the dark as to why MAPFRE did their technical stopover.
Obviously MAPFRE stopped, which we don't know why they stopped for 12 hours as well, and Cape Horn, and from looking at the routings, looked like they went straight in, so they obviously had something happening.
So what's ahead? Let's have a look at how this is going to shake out over the next few days. It's tight at the top, but the race is on for the back markers. Turn the Tide on Plastic is sailing with a small sail setup, particularly in the lighter winds, which is going to be a little bit like an F1 car losing its top gears. They just can't reach full speed. As we know, MAPFRE is also compromised, and both will be fighting to get ahead of the light winds, seen here in blue, to salvage what points they can in this eventful leg. While it might be bad for MAPFRE, they're only back in the race thanks to their shore crew being on standby at Cape Horn. For more information on that effort, I spoke earlier with Team Performance Manager Neal McDonald.
I think it's been a very, very hard leg, not just for our girls and boys, but for everybody. And, you know, I think people are going to be pleased that they're moving up north into the warmer climes. It's probably felt like a very long 2 weeks for everyone.
I can well imagine, and a long 24 hours rounding Cape Horn as well. We here in Race Control, and also fans at home, were astonished at all of the resources that you're able to get into place for that quick repair. Can you talk us through the planning that goes into a pit stop like that?
The planning for this particular pit stop started a year ago in Sanyenko, which was our base in Spain. And Shabby was very keen to make sure we had something in place. Our shore team, logistics team, you know, they'd been working on it for, it's a year, literally a year ago. So we hope we never need to use it, but clearly this time we did. So, you know, I think preparation is important in this race, and that was one of the areas we put some preparation into.
Now, in terms of the rules, can you talk us through that a little bit? You've got a 12-hour mandatory stop if you stop at all. And then what is it that controls you taking on material or outside intervention?
The rules are reasonably clear, straightforward. They haven't really changed much over the last few races. Basically, you're allowed outside help once you suspend racing. You're allowed people to come and help work on the boat, work on the mast, work on the sails. What you're not allowed is to put new sails on, for example. You're not allowed to replenish your food. So there's a strict set of rules, but they're reasonably straightforward and pretty well understood.
So it was pretty impressive to turn around and have the two parallel, well, 3, 4. We saw winches coming off and being serviced. We saw a crack at the back of the boom that was being glued up, along with a luft-to-leach rip in the mainsail and the original problem, which was the mast track. So an impressive effort to get all of those things in one job. However, there's one thing I want to ask you about, and that is that Team MAPFRE has a reputation for being completely stripped out, for not taking any surplus weight on board. You said they didn't take any food on board. Does that mean that they're going to be hungry by the time to get to Elodie-Jane?
They're going to be 1 day less food than they planned, but no, they won't be hungry because we planned for a longer leg. This has been a quick leg, so they won't run out of food. No.
How does this, from the team perspective, and your sort of analytics in terms of how to win this race, if you end up coming in last, and with Vestas that means you're now potentially in 5th place. How does that shake out in the points? We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the scenario is evolving every day.
It's a big kick in the teeth for us point-wise, but you know, this is a long race. We don't feel that it's going to be all over at the end of this leg, whatever our results. It's going to be a very hard mountain to climb. It could have been a very different story, but you know, these things happen. That's the way the race goes. I think it just means we've got to work a lot harder. We've got no buffer zone. I think if we'd finished this leg in good shape near Dongfeng in the placings, it would have been an easier race from us here on in. Now we've got a real fight. They're clearly going to have the upper hand in terms of points, unless things change drastically. And you know, we've got to scrap hard for those to get those points back.
And so just returning briefly to what's actually happening out on the water, has the mainsail gone back up? Is the performance getting back to normal? And how hard can they push with these repairs? Are they going to be at 80 or 90% of their potential?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't talked to the boat since they left their suspension, so you know as much, probably a bit more than I do. So my gut feeling is that they'll be at 90%, that sort of figure. They'll be very, very careful with the mainsail. It won't be nearly as strong as it should be. So if there's any hard work upwind, I think they'll be throttling back. As soon as it gets light, I suspect they'll be back to 100%. Right now, I suspect they're 90%.
Well, an incredible effort there from the MAPFRE shore crew, but it's a crucial moment in the race for them. Every point matters now for Team MAPFRE, and it's all open as the boats charge their way up the South Atlantic, and it's all open as to see who's going to make it into Ijidai first. The Southern Ocean might be behind them, but the real crux of this race is still to come. Don't forget to join back in. Don't touch that dial. We'll see you again tomorrow.